Hi, I'm Captain Larry Bell with Texas Fishing Tips. This is your weekly fishing report. Up here in Mesquite Bay, Ayers Dugout, Ayers Reef, this area here, we're going to talk some situational fishing this week. We've had wind blowing for the last 10 to 15 days. It's been pretty much consistently just been humming around 20, 25, gusting over 30, 35 at times. So what that does, especially up here in the Mesquite area with all the reefs and everything, you get a lot of blowouts. So you get just dirty water. Makes fishing very difficult, makes catching even more difficult. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to discuss this and just kind of just give you some stuff here that kind of helps you with that particular thing and that situation. So the great thing about being able to fish every day is that you get a lot of these different opportunities, whether they're good or bad, but it gives you experience in these different things to show you and how to approach and how to attack certain situations when weather is not going to always cooperate with us. So that said, so if you have a blowout situation, we have high winds like we've had for the last 10, 12 days, and it just blows everything out, muddy water, dirty water. First thing is you're always people trying to locate clean water. Oh, got to find some clean water. That is true. That is very true. If you can locate some clean water somewhere in and amongst that kind of stuff, then more than likely you will find a few fish. Maybe not great numbers, but you will find some fish. Now, if you cannot locate clean water, then your attack or your approach should be totally different. You should start moving your baits with a little bit more chartreuse on them, the orange tails or even the white tails with that, something that's got a little bit more darting action. Even darker baits. Those are kind of your areas, something that's got scent to it, like AM Fishing Lures has a garlic scent. Mirror Lures has an infused scent in there. Gulp has a scent that's on it. I'm sure many of you have thrown Gulp. Use a popping cork. Those are all things that can help you with the noisemakers. Topwater baits, darker topwater baits. The yellow or gray belly or a white or yellow or gray belly won't matter too much in super dirty water. So if you have a darker color bait, just dark all the way, and there are some black or even dark purple topwater baits, I believe that Mirror Lure has made in the past, and I think you can still get those. In these types of situations, those are great baits to have in your tackle box to use, because you can use that as the sound maker. Because when you got super high winds, you want something that's going to clack or something that's going to knock or something that's going to create a commotion outside of just waves constantly moving around all over the place. And especially with the dirty water that if you fish Mesquite and Ayers and Carlos, Spalding area during these high times or these high wind times, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about, because it just gets old. It looks like chocolate milk up there. So those types of baits are things that you want to use to work in these types of areas. Now, back on this backside of Ayers Dugout and Ayers Reef there, right along the edge of that, our water levels have come up. We've got more water in our system now, so it's really starting to open areas up again to get back into back bays, getting into some back lakes, get into some edges, some stuff. You can walk into some areas if you can't get your boat there. Those are always great options for you. But your back lakes and your back bays become key areas on these high wind days, because number one, you can get protection from them. Number two, your water's typically going to be cleaner in amongst that, because you got a lot of grass that are back in that, so that grass helps filters all that water out of there. But if you cannot and you don't want to get in those areas, you want to fish along these reef edges. Some of these areas can lend themselves. You get deeper water around them. You got some guts or some cuts that may come into that. Up in this area here by Ayers Dugout and Ayers Reef, there's a nice little gut and cut that comes down that island right there, and all the way up to Rattlesnake, all that area there. So when you have that little bit deeper water, that water is going to be cleaner down deep. So get you something that will get down there. You may want to bump up to an 1/8-ounce jig head for that particular scenario. Throw you different size baits. Throw you a burner shad, throw you a regular size model, throw you a super model, in whatever brand that you like to throw. It doesn't really matter, especially when you have these extreme situations like the winds that we've had for the last roughly couple of weeks. So you have to adjust. You can still catch fish. You can still locate fish. All the other stuff that we've talked about in past, information-wise, it still applies. You still have to have bait working in the area. If you don't have that bait source that's there, then those fish are not going to be there because they're going to be in dirty water. They want something to eat on, so they want that bait to be present. Always incorporate a major or minor no matter what the situation is, whether it's clean situation, calm situation, rough situation, blowout situation. Always incorporate a major or minor because that gives you a little bit extra edge during that time frame because it makes those fish a little bit more apt to want to eat. And if you have some stuff that's working in your favor, we've had there's two types of currents. You got tidal driven and wind driven. The wind driven current has not been an issue for the last couple of weeks, so there's been plenty of wind driven current. So you get on some of these edges where these reefs are, where you got little cut throughs or pinch points or something to that effect. Those are great opportunities when you got that type of wind that pushes current through there, and those fish are going to stage, especially if you got the bait present, if you've got a major or minor working for you, you got good structure. Of course, the shell would be a structure. Your pinch point would be a great structure. If you've got grass, edges, guts, those type of things are all structure that fish love to kind of hang around, use as ambush points in that particular thing. So just remember when you've got these high winds like this, and hopefully we'll get some relief from all this kind of stuff here in the next few days. But until that happens, these are just different tactics that you can apply to these different types of situations, especially up here in the Mesquite Bay System area. Up here on Jaybird Point, you got these back lakes that are here. This one back in here, there's this bigger one here that's got two entrances in that's down this way. Some people call it Sherman's. If you talk to some old-timers, they'll call it Sherman's. Younger folk, middle-aged, whatever, people that have fished it in the last 10 or 15 years may call it the Vincent Slough Back Lake because Vincent Slough backs up to this right down from that. This back lake here with our rise in our tides, we've had more water that's been coming into our systems. We're starting to get to those bull tides that are starting to show up. What happens is it pushes these water back into these back lakes in here, so it starts to light those areas up. Which what I talked about in the last little segment there is in these back lakes like this, even when you got these 20, 25, 30 mile an hour winds, if you can safely navigate to these areas coming from the boat ramp, whether you're coming from Copano Bay Bridge or if you're coming from St. Charles or if you're coming all the way from Cove Harbor or Rockport or one of those areas there, getting across the open bay on that type of situation can be a little dicey. So that's something you might want to consider on those type of days. So it's always important to incorporate weather reports into your day before you begin it. As long as you can safely navigate to these areas, man, you can get in these back lakes and you can dock your boat, get up in there, and get there and just get on the wind side of it, just pushing the bait and water and everything on a windward shoreline. These fish get back in here, that grass starts to clean that water up, so you get some really maybe just off color enough that you can still make all the structure out, which is all your grass. You got just some scattered shell that's in some of these back lakes. Throw your topwater baits in here, man. If you like to throw topwater and you like topwater action, get back in these things, man. There's redfish that are back in these things. Trout like to get in these areas back here, especially bigger trout. They like to get in some of these areas because they can stay protected back here. You don't have to worry about being eaten by a porpoise that's out there cruising around on the shoreline. Especially now we're right smack dab in the middle of our spawn. So that's one of these areas here. So you can locate your really nice fish trout-wise in some of these areas back here. So something to take in consideration. So when you got skinnier water that's back here, which typically this is going to be, knee deep to thigh deep, depending on what kind of tides that we've got and what's going on back in here, stay to that 16th ounce jig head. Keep throwing that thing. Throw your mid-size burner shad, Little John, mirror lure, something to that effect size-wise, or maybe you have something else that you like to throw that's your go-to that's in that size, at 2.5 to 3.5 inch size range, smaller profile, not as fat. Got a nice little paddle on it or a rat tail where that thing will give you some darting action. And what usually typically happens with that clear water, you want to use something that's a little bit more translucent. So that really flashes and darts, and so you get those reactionary strikes. Again, always incorporate the majors and minors in your fishing day, no matter what. It doesn't matter if you're throwing bait or if you're throwing artificials. It's more important for artificial than it is for bait, guys. But whether you do that or not, always incorporate it. make sure that you're planning your day that you're going to have a major or minor happening sometime during the time frame that you're going to be out on that water, because you will see productivity go up during that time frame, somewhere in and around that. So always incorporate that. Structure, another great thing. Again, currents, whether it be wind-driven or tidal-driven, always important. Look for your bait. That's always your number one key thing, is locate that bait that's working back in there. Fish these edges. These fish are going to start moving out here on the sand areas. That hard-packed sand's fixing to become a key place that you're going to have to start locating fish. They'll be out here on the edges like that J Pert, all the way down toward Spalding, one of my favorite areas to fish down there. You got so many different opportunities to fish back in that. You got the back lakes, you've got mouths, you got drains, you got a bigger out front area that's got a bunch of structure and everything that goes into it. All those things really come into play. And you can get a little bit of protection too. With the primary area, you got that southeast wind that's going to be humping across the top of that. So you get some nice protected areas down in here, and typically clean water, unless we just have a really funky wind. But what we've had the last couple of weeks, this area down here has typically been pretty protected, and it's been fairly clean for the most part. If you fish down in there, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Again, topwater baits, supermodels. We're transitioning toward a new moon, so again, all bets are going to be on right there, because you can take supermodel, you can take a bigger version, take a Miradyne, you can take a double D, anything that's got a big profile, small profile, everything will be in play for you. So that's just something to consider when you get your tackle box and you get ready to go fish up in these areas. Up here in Swan Lake, hadn't been up in here in a little bit, so with our water levels and everything coming back, this area back here starts to light up. Fresh water starts to come back into this area here. It starts to rejuvenate these back lake areas. Up around these islands here, and one thing about it, when you wade this, make sure that you're really prepared yourself, because there's some really super deep mud that's back in these areas, really muddy. So you want to make sure that you're prepared for that. Now, we're starting to transition away from those super muddy areas now. So, our water temperatures are starting to be mid-70s consistently. Air temps are upper 70s, low 80s, even higher than that from time to time. So ambient temperatures are going to continue to rise the temperature of the water. So what we do when that happens is we want to get around these areas that's got a little bit harder packed sand, start to work around those areas there, and start working the guts and the cuts that come through, especially like this area here in the Swan Lake. You got these mouths that are in here. Start transitioning toward the front half of that. This area here sets up really good for those southeast breeze and how that blows across the top of that, so you can get some protection on the outside edge. The fish have not typically showed up out there yet, but that's not too far away. So we're beginning to work these back shorelines here in Swan Lake, which is super protected from a south-southeast breeze. Again, the last 10 days that we've had these 25-plus mile-an-hour winds, these are great areas that you can get into. Again, if you can safely navigate to these particular areas, if you're coming off the 188 bridge over there, or maybe the Swan Lake area, or if you're up there in Pete's Bend and Italian Bend area there, then those will be areas that if you're coming out of that, then you can get to it okay. But if you're coming all the way around from Copano Bay Bridge, then yeah, you're gonna take it in the mouth. So just get yourself there safely. But all that back in here, topwater baits, throw them. Supermodels, throw them. Again, we're transitioning toward a new moon, so you want to start throwing a little bit bigger profile bait. You can throw a burner shad if you want to, or something smaller, a Little John mirror lure. It depends on what your water clarity is back in this. Again, if you got that clear water condition where you can see, a couple of feet down into the water pretty clear, then throw something translucent. If that water's 6, 8, 10 inches deep and that's all you can see, darker baits, that's what you're going to want to throw. Incorporate that chartreuse tail in there. Incorporate that orange tail or the white tail. Work these edges all around here. The grass in here has been pretty good for the most part after our winter. All this area up in here, there's redfish that get back in these suckers, man. When you got that bait working on that back shoreline, take your time with it. Again, incorporate a major or minor into that fishing day, and you're going to find fish somewhere in and around that time frame. It's going to happen. So just take your time with this. These winds will subside at some point in time, and then lots of areas will open back up for us. But this is a great area back in here to locate you some redfish and a few scattered trout. Thanks for watching. I'm Captain Larry Bell.